You can now stream the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi TV, which is available on Fire Stick, Roku, iOS, and Android. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Joe Atwill. First, a couple of announcements. You can now watch the forbidden documentary Occult Louisiana free on Tubi. We have a link for you right in the description. Other great ways to help support Forbidden Knowledge News. You can sign up for a premium membership at rokfin.com/FKN+. You'll get access to all our premium content and all the premium content from every creator on Rokfin. If you'd like to help with production of the next film, Doorways of Perception, you can make a donation using the links in the description. Anything is greatly appreciated. You can also help by downloading our podcast episodes directly through Spreaker, which is our podcast provider. That's always free to you. Finally, booking guests for April. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Joseph Atwill. He is an author and researcher. He began his religious studies as a youth in Japan at Mary's Military Academy. After selling his shares in the software industry, he engaged into Bible studies and his research into several historical topics. Joe, welcome. How you doing?
I'm just fine, Chris. How are you?
I am excellent, and this is such an important discussion we're going to be having today. I want to get your insights into one of the most common questions that really comes up in this community. It's, who are they? How long have they been in power? Are they all evil? Is it a top-down power structure? How do they connect to the dystopian agendas unfolding? That's a lot of questions to start with, so we've got a lot to get into. But before we do, this is your first time on, let the audience know more about yourself and your work.
Well, I'm certainly best known for being an author. I wrote Caesar's Messiah and Shakespeare's Secret Messiah. The books have been very popular. I also occasionally am a talking head. I've been on BBC and Ren Network in Russia, Fox News, usually talking about Christianity, but occasionally about political matters like the Ukrainian war, for example. I changed politically after analyzing the events of 9/11. I didn't really, finish the analysis, actually began it for 4 or 5 years, but I, just concluded that it was impossible for anything other than a inside job to have occurred. And this really changed sort of how I looked at government in general. And I've started speaking about that on the internet. And this was related to, the work I had done on Christianity and Shakespeare, which in general promotes the idea of skepticism. I would say I won't go into the conclusions of these works if you're not interested, but in general, I just say, we need to be skeptical about sort of history and literature that's given to us about the motivations and things. And so I have, been an outspoken critic of Zionism. As a result of all of this, I feel that the real history of Zionism hasn't been, given to the public, and if they were really aware of that, they wouldn't support, the history and the creation of Israel in the way that they do, and which of course is topical at the moment because of the Gaza situation, which just to give you an example of where my strand of thought leads me, I would look at that as a false flag. I don't believe that there's any other way to look at it coherently. Thinking is difficult in this world because our history has been perverted, and therefore, what we think are facts that we can plug into algorithms of logic are not necessarily real. And I promote basically the Socratic method. I just say, look, we just got to be as logical and fact-based as we can, and particularly in communication with one another, we have to try to help each other be more logical and rational because our minds are being assaulted by the oligarchs and their media. And so we need to try to help one another. And the real, I'm only going to do this once because I know people often don't like it, but I really want to, just congratulate you on your work, because this is really, what will ultimately help us, basically recover from the propaganda, from the mind control, is to have lots of independent voices who are critical thinkers, just bringing the information to the public, having the courage to do it. So, I try to promote just sort of logic-based analysis. And like in the case of the October 7th invasion of Israel, I would say, look, it makes no sense. What has been told to us makes no sense. There's no way that the Israeli border technology would have been breached 7 times. That's just impossible. The very nature of the attack, the idea of Hamas with their tiny, unorganized army attacking Israel, is simply suicidal and stupid. Why would that be, reasonable? And then, moreover, the first facts that were given to the public, beheaded babies, and then this rave dancing event with bikini-clad girls who are being slaughtered. I mean, these things are, it wouldn't even make it as a bad Chuck Norris movie, the hang gliders and stuff. I mean, this stuff is ridiculous. This is all being done just to bamboozle us and to create a pretext so the public doesn't rise up in arms against, this policy, which was obviously planned well in advance. And so this is the suggestion I make is, when we're given these events, which are so hard to really make sense of, we have to look for interpretive frameworks that are logical, that the facts that we can claim and understand plug into. And so when you look at the October 7th so-called invasion as a false flag, it makes perfect sense. It's perfectly rational. When you look at it as as the media has given it to us, it makes no sense at all. So this is kind of what I think shows like yours are really moving, hopefully, mankind, to use an expression, it too is to look for interpretive frameworks which are just more coherent, more fact-based.
Now, earlier you mentioned, no, that was perfect. That was perfect introduction. Yeah. Earlier you mentioned how difficult it is to navigate and discern our history because of the alterations. Hell, they're changing everything before our very eyes. They're wiping the internet. They're changing the literature that we're reading, altering everything that we have access to. All the information that was easily accessible 5 to 10 years ago is all changing. Imagine 50 to 100 years ago, how much everything has been altered and changed based on those who presented the information, those who recorded the information. Those are usually the people in power at the time, and usually the most corrupt and evil people on the planet. So that's what we're really looking at with our history. How do you sort through and decipher through this stuff?
Well, just the best I can. As I said, the things that are immutable are logic and our sensory when we are not intoxicated. We can trust those things. And so, just to go back to the example of the invasion of Israel by the Palestinians, so-called, we need interpretive frameworks that are logical, that actually are not contradicted by kind of reason. And so, to get there, I don't think any one person could ever make much progress, because I think one versus the media is just too overwhelming. However, what we can do is kind of what we're moving toward as we go through this program, is that we can work together in order to help us think better. Facts that are not known to many can be shared by those who have access to them. They can be ascertained in terms of their veracity, in terms of how they plug into a logical framework. And so shows like yours are really, and the communication that is part of it, because it's not that you just have however many thousands of listeners, but they communicate. The ideas that come on the show, the people who come here and talk about their understanding, this gets communicated. So really, this answers your question. This is exactly how we can do it, and this is the only way we can do it. And moreover, I would say that propaganda as a tool has been completely dominant in our world, well, since the Dark Ages. And so really, we have at this moment more hope and more opportunity to make progress than ever before. There really isn't any excuse for people who are, moping and black-pilled. This is our time. We actually have the internet. There is a tremendous amount of skepticism in terms of government now that can be used as analytic platforms for other ideas. And just as an example, if the vaccine, which was mandated in so many ways in the United States with the COVID mess, if that had come out in the 50s, there would have been 100% subscription to it. I guarantee it. I was there. I can tell you, they would have just done it. Today, a third of the people didn't take it, even though in many cases this was difficult. They had job issues, or there was propaganda they had to resist. Okay, a third didn't do it. Well, that's a political party, my friend. This is power. Moreover, look at the independent registrations. It's over half now of the American electorate register as independents, larger, of course, than either the Democrats or the Republicans. Well, again, in the 50s, this was unthinkable. So progress is being made. It's incremental. Now, in opposition to that, the oligarchs are developing their technology. We use the internet to try to liberate ourselves. They use it to enslave us. So the struggle is on, and one just hopes that you and your generation of researchers and thinkers and communicators, that you just have the power of basically self-preservation, because this is our moment and it won't come again. And they are trying to finish us off, either physically or mentally. So we've got to fight back, and we've got to understand their techniques. The thing about propaganda, and I at least I have written so much about it. I think I have at least that much authority in terms of this subject. I spent a lot of time studying it and talking about it. Propaganda doesn't work at all if you don't trust the person who's bringing it to you. It's that's just the human mind. If you have to give trust to that individual. So they set up personalities that will be basically cul-de-sacs to move us in directions away from the right analytic path, the one that leads to them. You see, they will set up these cul-de-sacs. They'll set up health freedom people who seemingly are in opposition, but in fact are taking you to some bizarre understanding which doesn't really lead you to an identity of who's doing all this. So it's a very exciting time. The battle is engaged, and propaganda is, in my opinion, going to have a kind of diminishing returns. And this is what is exciting. They are at a point, there is so much skepticism now when they bring out the memes, which are designed to just encase us, in these little thought bubbles. Well, look, now just no one believes a thing they say. They just don't believe them. They mean Wolf Blitzer, or, these people could just speak until they're blue in the face and have clever memes and techniques and nudge technology and Facebook. Doesn't matter. Look at this. How many people who have really entered from kind of the normie, I just believe the American history that's presented by, the oligarchs. How many people have moved from that to could understand and engage you and your guests. How many people who have made that transition ever go back the other way? No one. Zero. You're looking at, these are the limits of and the power of human intelligence. No one ever goes into the sunlight and then walks back into the darkness. Once you've developed the skepticism, they've lost the power to control them. They may have different ways of dealing with them, but the power of the skepticism will always be there. So what we got to do is develop more skeptical people.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned a couple of things. Of course, what I really want to get to is who are they, but you also mentioned that there are seemingly pockets of resistance, and this is where people, I believe, get a lot of false hope. I believe that there are different factions that may not always agree on the outcomes of the certain agendas that are being put forward, but there's also infiltration, there's co-opting of any type of movement that is for the people that seems to be positive in the beginning. It's always infiltrated and steered in different directions so it's not going in the correct direction. And this is happening in this community as well. Certain players that we've seen on the scene for a long time that have been providing us with the information are being propped up, and there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation coming out of the community right now. Let's talk a little bit about the different factions. You said they have pockets of opposition, but is it just staged? Is it theatrical? Is it all part of the same show that we're seeing? What do you think?
Yeah, because the term pockets of resistance is a little vague, but I would say people, in my opinion, are kind of misunderstanding the historical process in that we aren't at the political stage yet. We're at the information dissemination. This is the process we're in now. And the real resistance is going on in the transmutation of people's minds, is that individuals are developing skepticism, and individuals are learning how to communicate who are skeptical. The organization that really matters is just the audience who listens to your show and the other podcasts that are in the same vein. That's what matters. We need to, because we can't really be a political power just yet. We don't have the numbers, and we have to go through the information process to get, I would say basically like 50% of the public has to be clear-minded enough that they could listen to your show, to say 10 guests, and understand everything that was said, have opinions about them, So we're not anywhere near there, but obviously we're moving in the right direction. And people just shouldn't be discouraged by, take the health freedom movement with the COVID mandates, which was, it produced all these personalities, but what did it really ever do at the end? I mean, remember, getting back to the ultimate question is, who are they? Who in the health freedom movement? I mean, I won't name their names, but they're very well known. They dominated the resistance. Who actually has taken the public to the identity and the motivation of the people who brought out the vaccine and the mandates? They don't do that. That you may get to the idea of the deep state. Well, what's that? That's just a cul-de-sac. That's just a term that helps people stop thinking, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, when I see these kind of public organizations manifest, like another person I think is a shill is Alex Jones.
Right.
I mean, I don't trust him as far. I mean, I just think he's an obvious shill. That's my opinion. Yeah. I could give you evidence of that, but the thing is that these are, they are controlled opposition. They're trying to basically slow down the process by which people become clear-minded and skeptical. Because the real way you can tell, Chris, is who is like real and who isn't, is who is the people who are demanding that the analysis go further and find out who are the individuals who are doing this. What is their motivation? Because here you get into, you have then the barrier. I would say that the group that's doing this, I would call them Judeo-Masonic, right? This would be, we can get into the identities, mm-hmm. but when you approach that, you have terms like conspiracy theorist, anti-Semite, Holocaust denier. These terms are barriers, right? Just as the shills and the pseudo organizations are barriers, they're barriers to thought. It's basically an invitation, with ad hominem to stop thinking along the lines that this person is suggesting that you should go. This person is an anti-Semite. This person is a conspiracy theorist, So they are ridiculed with these terms that are just designed rationally as thought stoppers. They just stop the process. You want to know who's real, who's demanding that we go further, who's demanding that we don't know yet who the individuals were, and to continue the Socratic process, man. I mean, the Socratic method, it'll get us right out of here, out of our, the process by which we're being enslaved and genocide, if we just start applying it to our current problems, our current plight, and trying to identify, who are these people, what is their motivation, what is actually happening to us. See, there's enough information. It's there. The data is there, but it is just so widely disseminated among all of the individuals that have different parts of the puzzle that it's impossible. Right now, we don't have kind of the analytic tools in the internet and in our communities to assemble it all and go right to, say the source of our problems. But we're moving in that direction. Every show you do moves us in that direction. And the thinking is getting better. They're trying to wreck our thought, but it isn't working because, as I said, the propaganda has reached diminishing returns. They bring out, it's like at the end with the vaccine mandates, they would bring out more rationales for taking another booster. This would actually turn more people off than would get people to start accepting, the vaccine. So they are at diminishing returns because there's too large a fraction of the population that is skeptical and that looks to information from shows like yours, right? These guys are, this collection of individuals is not going to be controlled by, by Facebook, by the nudge technology, by AI generating images of middle ages Europeans with black faces. I mean, the different ways they try to, promote their agenda. This is diminishing returns time. People just look at that and they go, well, they're obvious. We can see what they're doing.
Yeah, right. Well, let's get into a bit of the history of these people. You've done a great job tracing this back. How far back should we go when looking at the origins of these groups?
Well, there have been different groups that have influence in history. The group that is currently on top of us, I would call them Judeo-Masonic. Now, when you think of the Jewish aspect of it, it is not an accusation against Jews.
Right.
I think most of the Jews are as bamboozled and mind controlled as everyone else, right?
Yes.
The way to describe it is it's an analogy to like the mafia, where it was Sicilian, and this was how the organization maintained secrecy, is by this racial component. But it wasn't the people of Sicily. They hated the mafia in general. They weren't getting any benefit from it at all. But this would be how I would call the Judeo part of it. The Masonic part is easier to talk about, because you don't have the concern of anti-Semitism. Yeah. But it's certainly, I would say, at least till this century, was the most powerful part. So who are they? Well, basically, they're the tectons. They're actually referenced in Josephus in the 1st century. They're builders and architects. It's a secret society, as I would trace it. And there is, not enough data to give you like complete citations, but we can look at basically what happened and draw kind of as I was describing thought as creating logical context before. You can see that the Knights Templar would have come from the Messianic Jews who lost the struggle against Rome. The Templars would have been, I think they would have been described in the Dead Sea Scrolls as the builders. So they were, it was a secret society. They withdrew their public identity as Jews. They couldn't do that in the Roman Empire at this time. I mean, so they basically created an identity that could survive within the Roman Empire, and it was the Knights Templar. The origins of it is, who knows, the exact details, but it ends up with, there is a struggle going on between Catholicism and the Templars. You can see that the leader of the Templars, de Molay, is burned on the steps of Notre Dame. And then when the inversion of power occurred, the Masons then burned Notre Dame on the date commemorating his burning. So you can see who has taken control, over the time. Anyway, the Masons are also, because they're a secret society, they're hard to understand, but they're very ancient. They didn't begin in Scotland, though this was where you can kind of pick up the overt history. The Templars evidently had some agreement with Robert Bruce, the King of Scotland. You end up with the Scottish Freemasonry now, in the 17th century, becoming very powerful. 16th century, it's infiltrating the kind of the political life of Europe, and it's a secret society. No one knows who's who except with their little handshakes and whatnot. But you end up, we could go into great detail, but you can end up, say, in general, in 1840 with Palmerston. Palmerston is a Grand Master Freemason, and he sets up what's called Palmerston's Zoo, which basically is simply the Freemason control of all of the political centers of power throughout Europe. They had agents everywhere. They had color revolutions and infiltrators. They were killing, the legitimate, kings of these areas. They're replacing everyone. And so at that time, Palmerston Zoo, which is really well documented. If people want to see the receipts on this, I would suggest the LaRouche scholars. They just did a fantastic job of exposing Palmerston and how he controlled how the Masons controlled Europe. And Palmerston now began Zionism. Okay, so Zionism was not a Jewish project. Again, we go back to the idea of the Judeo-Masonic aspect of this. Palmerston began Zionism in 1840. He says, now is the time for the Jews to return to the homeland. Lord Palmerston, purported Christian, and of course, Freemason Grand Master and Prime Minister of England, he makes a declaration. The Jews reject it. The Jews actually had developed a religion that was called Reform Judaism, which had taken the position that Judaism should be a light, a moral adjunct for all humanity. Okay, just completely opposite of the Zionistic Judaism that is kind of in Israel today. So when Palmerston came out with his statement, Reform Jews organized against him, but they were swept aside, and actually their organization was subverted because Palmerston was representing the financial power of the British Empire. And they hired people to go into the congregations and basically over time broke down all of the idea of 1840, 1850, 1860. They broke down the idea of Judaism being something that the Gentiles could participate in, a overall moral force. And they returned to the ideas of like Deuteronomy with xenophobic and, the promised land specifically. And so you have the proto-Zionists, as I call them, from 1840 to about 1880, set up the whole structure of what becomes Israel. I mean, I won't go into all the details, but they were working on the project all the time. They had survey after survey that were paid for by the Freemasons and the British royal family. Those were the two funding entities. They sent them to Palestine. And basically they were there, the surveys are there to try to figure out how to replace the Palestinians, how to set up, the immigration of Jews into which areas so that they could have farmland and communications and things like this. So you finally got to Jewish Zionism around 1890 with Herzl. Now Herzl's an artificial figure of shill. He's an employee of the proto-Zionists, of the British Masonic Order. I mean, he had a nickname in college of Tancred, which is a character in one of Disraeli's novels. Disraeli is one of the big Freemason promoters of the proto-Zionism. So you can see they basically, and his speeches were all just copies of Disraeli's speeches. So he's an employee of the proto-Zionists. He's there to hand over the project to Jews, right? Mm-hmm. Who are now have been developed, and you start getting, you get Ben Gurion and Golda Meir and all these people. Well, anyway, this is simply a Masonic project, which is related to their fixation on the rebuilding of the temple. Notice Hiram Abiff is their kind of central character. He was the builder of the first temple. So this is what you're dealing with, is a group who has taken an oath, and the oath is passed on through generations, is using Freemasonry as a cloak of secrecy. That is intent on reestablishing Israel as they define it, under their terms, to set up their temple. And they claim lineage, I'm sure, all the way back to Hiram Abiff. Even though I think if you did a DNA sample, you'd see that that's just a fantasy on their part. But nevertheless, this is how they view themselves. They view themselves as basically in opposition to Christianity, which was related to the group that defeated them in the first century. And they want to set up, this is why they call it a New World Order. If you want to see an example of their literature, I would suggest people read an analysis of The Tempest I did. You can just Google my last name, Atwill, and The Tempest. And you can see that I show that the play is actually anticipating basically Zionism and the creation of a Jewish world ruler. And people have always known, scholarship have always understood that the play is based on Isaiah. I won't go into all these details, it'll just put everyone to sleep, but the play is based on Isaiah. But what scholarship, if you read the article, you'll see that what scholars have not noticed is that it isn't just the first part of Isaiah the play is representing. It's also representing the second part of Isaiah, which describes a genocide of the Gentiles, an area where only the owls exist in the desolation. And incidentally, this is where you see the owl often used as a symbol of the New World Order types. This is where it comes from. It's because the owl could see in the dark, basically, and so they put it in this genocide of the Gentiles world as a way of recognizing that the people who are coming out of the darkness. And this, incidentally, The Tempest is important because this is where the expression Brave New World comes from. Brave New World was then used by Huxley and Kipling to describe a post-Christian world, right? And then the phrase was then reused by H.G. Wells, and it became New World Order. So you have Brave New World, which is the just one way of describing it, and then New World Order. Order, of course, is Masonic order. This is what H.G. Wells, a massive Freemason monster, that's how he's using the expression. So the brave New World is the New World Order. It's a post-Christian world wherein the ancient lineages who saw themselves as part of the first century struggle against Rome, who were defeated then, and now are trying to reestablish what they call order in the world. You'll notice the symmetry in the first century. The Romans defeated the Jews, and the diaspora occurs, right? In World War II, the Germans, who have been set up as the Aryan proxy, right, are completely defeated, and now the Jews return to Israel, right? So we have the establishment of Israel. So the Masons see this as a kind of symmetrical justice that they are applying in the world. And so now when you branch out, when you say, look at our US presidents, look at how many of them were either overtly Freemason or were connected to it. Like Clinton was a Demolay, for example. The Bushes, they were, Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is just an annex of Freemasonry, right? And so you have secret societies. And I think when you get to like Biden, you just have he's what I call a lifetime actor. I mean, he purports to be a Catholic. He puts, ash on his forehead and Wednesday, before Lent, but he's just a shill. I would call him a converso, and I would just suggest that if you want to really identify him precisely, get a DNA test, and you'd be able to see exactly who his family structure, who he's related to. He's not an honest Catholic. The whole idea, when you look at like the people who go, it's just so common, but U.S. presidents go to Jerusalem and they go to the wall and they daven and they put their hands on the wall and they make like testaments of faith, whatever. I'm not sure what they're doing, but you see, this is completely irrational if they are Christian. If you read the Gospels, you'll see that the destruction of Jerusalem is presented as something that is natural because the Jews were basically evil, right? So why would someone who claims to be a Christian then suddenly want to invert his entire theology, right? And say, well, let's be Zionist. You see, Zionism is not something that falls out of the Gospels. The Gospels are the most anti-Zionist work ever created. So, when you get to, say, identification of like the Rothschilds, okay, so the Rothschilds I don't think this is the top of the pyramid. I think that's the top of the pyramid would be hidden from us, but the Rothschilds they're a figure that they've given to us. Okay, so like you look at, for example, Soros, right? All the mischief he does with our cities. Soros comes from the Rothschild family. His wealth was artificially created by the Rothschild family. Look in my state, I live in California, you have Gavin Newsom as our governor, right? Gavin Newsom's father was the financial steward of the Getty family. Gavin Newsom grew up in J. Paul Getty's house, right? This was his household. Okay. So now, who's Getty? Well, he's a Mason who was allied with the Rothschild. When Rothschild was, Hitler for a period of time had the Rothschild baron under house arrest in his palace in Berlin. The person that they brought to get all of his artwork and fancy furniture out was J. Paul Getty, right? So then Getty goes back to London and lives with these guys, and then of course following the war he becomes billionaire with all these weird oil deals, which no one knows how in the hell he came up with. Well, I tell you how he came up with them. He came up with the same way that Soros came up with the insights and interest rates so he could invest in the futures and make $1 billion. These are artificial people. Mm-hmm. Bill Gates is another one. It's completely artificial. I mean, he couldn't even code, and yet IBM gave him the operating system for the personal computer, right? You just take this as a business franchise. Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But then you look in his background and you see, his father is head of Planned Parenthood and his mother is one of the Federal Reserve banking families. Well, this is who they are. You see, they are a secret society. So we can't, and we don't need to know identities down to the last degree. We need to know who's in the society and who isn't, right? When you look at Gavin Newsom or J. Paul Getty or George Soros, and you see these direct connection back to a family so central to this project, this historical project of establishing the new world order as the Rothschilds, then you know who they are. Then they're identified, okay? And once they are, then you can apply analytic techniques to defend yourself against them, to expose them, right? Because they can't really hide from their past. And you get to the point where you can draw too many connections and it becomes too clear that there is some organizing principle to all of this. And now, this is what we're dealing with.
Would you agree that the events of World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, 9/11, and even COVID were all stepping stones for achieving their ultimate global domination goal.
Yeah, everyone, 100%. Look at the license plate of Archbishop Ferdinand when he was assassinated, and just amazingly, it has the date of the armistice written on it, which is just and see, this is the Masons, the prefiguration, that they knew that the date was going to be November 11th, that this was the date that they were going to end the armistice. And so World War I was completely artificial. The king of Germany, Wilhelm, was the cousin of the king of England. They were both grandchildren of Victoria, the Masonic witch. And so then you have this inexplicable ramming together of armies, right? Carnage. My grandfather was at the Somme. He was mustard gassed, and he was lucky he lived. He died in our house in 59, so he made it for 40 years. But wow. 60,000 people died in the afternoon. And this was a battle that had no objective. I mean, it was just the ramming together of Europeans. So this was the purpose of World War I and World War II. I wrote an article, again, there's no paywall. You can just go, the Freemason invention of the Nazi Party. And I show how Hitler was just an obvious creation of Freemasonry. Okay, they set this up for 50 years, for heaven's sakes. And I tried to give the receipts, and I think people will find details in there that will be, very, I think, illuminating as in terms of how this individual was put in power, and then why he would fight in this inexplicable way down to the last German. We had this at the end, we have to either live or die as a race, I mean, and at the same time, this total war concept is being held by the Masonic British leader, Churchill. So bad luck for the German people. They are being led into complete destruction by the political powers. I would say that it's because the political powers are part of this historical, project, and that the defanging and depopulating of Europe was just critical to the project. So, then you get to, the mandates for COVID. I mean, of course, it's preposterous, just preposterous. The disease was not anywhere near, if it even was real, was not as lethal as, any more than the flu. So they were training the population. It's like 911. What was really the end result of 911? Well, it was lines at the airports. That was what really came out of it, right? So that you can be inspected, right? Well, this is just social control. They are just incrementally moving us, with lines at the airport will become lines at the grocery store, mandates for, the vaccine for one virus will become mandates for, chemical insertion into every human for everything. You want to see the plan. I mean, Huxley, who is a monstrous Freemason, he just tells you what it is in Brave New World, where you've got the government controlling the intellectual levels of all of the different elements of population. And what they're doing is creating the epsilon and delta class. I mean, I would say that the, autism, you look about how obviously it is related to vaccines and to the chemicals, the toxicities. The fact that no one is doing anything about it just shows you that this is the delta and epsilon class slowly, incrementally being brought about. Right? That's what is going on right now. Is that they are transforming us through chemicals into diminished thought creatures for the purpose of basically being sex slaves and household servants. At the conclusion, where the controllers will have basically no, they won't have anyone with any kind of mental power to have to worry about.
Earlier you mentioned the political power structure, political leaders. Do you think that these people, these individuals, even presidents, have an idea of what the bigger picture is, have an idea of exactly why they're playing the role they are? How aware do you think they are of the bigger picture of what's unfolding?
They know everything. They have to. They couldn't be in the office. I mean, they at least know they have to obey the back channel. You know, they may not know all of the plans, but they know they have to obey the back channel. So that means they know everything. They know that the key thing that has to be known is that what we see as a active democratic political system in America and Europe is untrue. What we have is a system of control. The presidents and the democratic process are manipulations so that we don't recognize that we're being led off a cliff. I mean, you know, that's why when you go into like the Bush family or the Clintons, I mean, you're looking at lifetime actors. Mm-hmm. They will just lie about their background, who they are, what their motivations are. You know, people will say, well, there are exceptions like Kennedy. I mean, I don't know. I don't have any way to know that. I think they have, on one hand, he was assassinated. So this may be, you know, a way to think, well, he was okay. This guy was actually off the reservation. But, you know, I would say that in general, what we're dealing with is stagecraft. And it doesn't matter if it's Trump or Hillary or Obama or Biden. They are all controlled by the back channel. I mean, look at 1/6, right? This is a theatrical production. Trump obviously knows what Pence is going to do. I mean, they couldn't have not communicated this fact. And yet he's still promoting the demonstration. You've got agents in the crowd that are trying to promote this invasion, you know, of the Capitol building. I mean, this is all stagecraft to set up the historical event of an insurrection, as they would call it, so that they can then bring draconian, you know, observation and laws and regulations against Europeans who catch on to the fact that, wait a second, something is up here. There's something doesn't make any sense. I mean, all the vaccine mandates, the fake 1/6 experience, 9/11 is still, you know, a sort of Damocles hanging over the oligarchs, because that's getting, you know, I mean, it's just not something people can really go into and think about, look at the evidence and come out with any other conclusion that we're being manipulated by a secret society. So they know, the presidents know, they are lifetime actors. They have been trained, and you have to look in the background of the people to really see how it's done. I mean, like with Obama, look into his mother's background, look into her connections to Gregory Bateson. Gregory Bateson, you know, this anthropologist at Esalen, you know, like Huxley, you know, like promoting, you know, peace and love. But then you look deeper and you see he's part of MK Ultra. Yeah. He's creating the mind control that he's claiming to be resisting. You know, really good like thought kind of process is to go and get the interview that Aldous Huxley did. I forget that guy's name. He was the guy who was on 60 Minutes. But he did this interview with him, Dan Rather, and could have been. Anyway, he does this interview with him, and he's saying, you know, the government is so terrible. They could get these controls, and we have to be careful about drugs, and the population could be led into a place where it doesn't want to be, and we really have to worry about this. We have to organize democratically against it. At the same time, the exact same time that he was giving that interview, then when the MK Ultra documents came out, you could see that Huxley was giving instructions to an MK Ultra doctor about how to set up experiments to determine how to control people with LSD.
Yeah.
At the exact same time he was giving the interview, right? Then look at Gordon Lawson, right? You know, you look at the May 1957 Life magazine article where he's talking about how, you know, I've discovered magic mushrooms and it's incredible. You know, we're going to have this connection into God that we've never had before. It's all this religious spiritualism is going to be elevated. And well, wait a second. His going to Mexico is an MK Ultra project. It's actually listed and funded. the people with him are CIA employees. I mean, the thing is ridiculous. Obviously, we were being taken into like a sex, drugs, and rock and roll context, right? For the purpose of diminishing us. They wanted to break apart the family, right? They wanted to, pornography is an enormous tool for dystopia. And they wanted to shatter ethnicity, right? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They give you the workers' paradise. And in exchange, you give up your political agency. And the end result is ultimately just like what happened with the first workers' paradise with Russia, right? You end up with 150 million slaughtered humans, 50 years later. So, that's kind of like what I would say about the presidents is they are lifetime actors. They are no better than, Gordon Wasson, Aldous Huxley, Gregory Bateson, Tim Leary, all of these people who are connected into the CIA, who created the counterculture, they were all lifetime actors, groomed, trained to put out these images. The presidents are just another version of that genre.
How do you see everything unfolding now? Do you see any victories? I have a lot of hope for what's happening just because of the sheer amount of people that are waking up and becoming aware of the corruption, and it has an effect on the events unfolding because ultimately we put these people in control. We allowed them. We consume their products. We consume their propaganda. So we, on a level, allow a lot of this to unfold. But as we become more aware collectively, we may not allow that to unfold as much anymore. I'd like to get where you see all this going and how this is unfolding now.
Going to world revolution against the oligarchs. That's where it's going. And it's inevitable. You can't expose this project without having the public rise up against it. I mean, how the revolution occurs, I don't know, but I know it is occurring. We are every day spreading information. It's just becoming, I mean, the stuff I'm talking about now, like 20 years ago, they would have like scratched their head. No one even understood it. Now it's going to at least resonate, be coherent with everyone who's listening to this. I bet everyone has a sense of part of it or all of it. They may not agree with everything, of course, but they will definitely see it as well. Okay, this is a pulse of information that makes sense. I can get value out of it. And so the main thing is the two things is, well, three. One, continue listening to your show and supporting it. There's that. And then secondly, the Socratic method, which is the exchange of information using logic and reason between ourselves, right? We have to help each other think better. We have to openly acknowledge that we are in a process of logic when we talk to one another. We have to try to learn that the egotism that is given to us where we don't want to lose arguments and we have to win arguments, I mean, this is all nonsense. When we exchange logic, it's like a spiritual connection between people. We are helping people to understand. The understanding is what is important, not the winning or losing, these little petty struggles that we are given to and encouraged to do. So there's that, the Socratic method based on the information that's coming out. And then the most important thing is the rebellion in your body. I mean, they are developing the delta and epsilons with their chemicals, right? So you've got to absolutely, not, if there's like more than one ingredient, you can't eat the thing. Just eat healthy foods, find a way to get the most organic food you can, exercise. I mean, the things that create physical strength and health are the greatest. They're the greatest rebellion because, Chris, that's what's being attacked most severely. We don't see it. I mean, it's all hidden. I mean, of course, the vaccines were like it came out of the closet. People could recognize that that's something that could damage us. But think about all the other things that have been hidden, all of the food additives, the glyphosate, which is just an absolute nightmare for the body, which is now, in all of the foods that are not organic. And so we've been systematically attacked. I mean, Bernays, Freud's nephew and the propagandist for the oligarchs, he's the one that got fluoride into the water systems. You see, I mean, this is how far back it goes, how specific the attack is. So, I mean, my house, man, I got a garden, I got organic produce, and I have a Berkey water filter. And, I'm 75 years old and I'm pretty spunky. So there you go. I'm not touting myself as some kind of example, but I am saying I'm ambulatory and conscious, and I don't have any illnesses,
Right.
And that's because I've been aware for 20 years that I was under attack, and I'm not trying to look good. I'm just trying to be good. I'm trying to be myself, my actual body. And when you do that, you have the power to think better. So there you go. So it's pretty simple, I mean, eat better foods and try to think better, particularly among one another, particularly in thought circles. I mean, people are listening to this. Every one of them has got someone they talk to about this stuff. Just try to say, well, maybe Atwill's got a point here. Let's give it a shot. Let's try to be more conscious of the logic that we are using among ourselves and how we analyze things. Let's try to be more precise, in vetting what is real, what isn't. We are under a cloud it's an illusion of history. And so, and one expression I use is that we know more about the future than we do about the past. I mean, the future is something, at least, is it's yet to be perverted. We know the past is just a lump of sophistry, so forget about that. And then notice the expressions that they use to stop our thinking. Conspiracy theorists, this just always cracks me up. Anti-Semitic, Holocaust denier,
domestic terrorist.
Domestic terrorist. I mean, I have been called everything. I mean, if you go online, you'll see that there's whole websites dedicated to the idea I'm a crypto Jew because I wrote Caesar's Messiah. There's another whole group that attacks me because I'm here to destroy Western civilization. I brought up the idea that Shakespeare is written by a woman. And then now it's anti-Semitism because I'm so outspoken about like Gaza and this stuff. Look, it's like I'm happy to accept all the terms. And I don't really, when I come across this, I always go, I'm glad you called me that. I am, because it's not, I want to show you that the term is used to try to stop the Socratic process. You see, this is what the term is for. Look, all of my ideas, I could be wrong, and I know I'm wrong about lots of them, but it's a process of facts and reasoning and observation. You can't stop it just by saying there's something in my head that is like bad. You got to keep moving through the thing. They just don't want the process to go on. They can see, everyone can see at this point, the process is actually starting. Yeah. Too many people are watching your show, bro. Yeah. They are not there because they can be stopped by these little think no more expressions, right? They just can't be. Yeah. So there it is. Oh, yeah, no, as far as the future, man, I wish I was 25, not 75. I think we're going to win. I think it's going to be a glorious, kind of recreation of the human spirit.
Yeah, I agree. When looking at the bigger picture of everything, do you think the ultimate agenda is a level of depopulation? You look back at everything, and from a spiritual or biblical perspective, you can say that they're going off of some kind of playbook from the book of Revelations to try and bring about this apocalyptic event that depopulates the planet, whether it's through wars or pandemics or whatever agenda there is. Do you think that's the ultimate goal, is depopulation and control?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that the fact that you see the owl as a symbol. I mean, look at Bohemian Grove, the entrance of Bohemian Grove. They have like a cryptic expression from Shakespeare, which I could decode, but we'd have to take a whole show to do it. But they have the owl. Now, where does the owl for? The owl is just the owl of Isaiah 51. The owl appears after the genocide of the Gentiles. And then, moreover, look at the War Scroll and the Dead Sea Scrolls. Look at how they describe an apocalypse. Right, they describe a final battle, and then just look at Deuteronomy, in which you see the genocide mandated by God of 7 ethnicities. Right, the Jebusites, all these people. Well, this is the kind of religious structure of the project. Now, are they really going to like kill every, person who isn't in their lineage? I have no idea. I know that the process of their political control involves depopulation. We've already seen it. We've already seen it in World War I, World War II, and now, with the COVID mess, you can actually see that depopulation is part of it. So, yeah, I think we have, and it's an important fact because this basically gives us the energy of self-defense, and of self-preservation. That's where we should be looking. We should not be complacent. We should not, like, oh my gosh, and I'm not going to, don't want to do this because it's tiring. Look, we're fighting for our lives at this point, and you should have people should have the ability to, the simple rebellions, the trying to be open to discussion and using, logic and reason with one another. This is not, everyone can do that. And then the revolution inside your body. Stop eating the foods which are part of the attack. You get those two things done. I mean, from there, the power will just continue to develop and grow. I mean, they are depopulating us, and first of all, they're making us so depressed. And I mean, just look at the explosion in autoimmune diseases. It's just incredible. Diabetes, autism, and now even like cancer and myocarditis. I mean, all of these diseases are symptoms of the fact that our bodies are being attacked. This isn't something that's occurring from nature. And notice that there isn't even any media coverage of this. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Isn't
it amazing that the correlation between like glyphosate and all the autoimmune disorders, why isn't there more publicity about this? I mean, here's one, my favorite. Why isn't there more media coverage about the fact that there has been a 60% reduction in sperm in Europeans since 1950? Now think about that. Yeah. 60%, right? So when you say, is it depopulation? We're right in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of the process. When you're down 60% of your sperm, you are being depopulated. And notice again, this should be a crisis of the highest order. It should be the headline of every media outlet in America, right? We have to do something about what's going on in our bodies, and it's silence, right? This shows you that there's awareness of it. This shows you that this is a conscious attack upon us, right? And they are just trying to keep quiet about it until they get the numbers down to where they want.
Right. Well, let's close on this. Do you think the level of awareness, the amount of people waking up to everything, may be a deterrent from entering into another global conflict like World War III?
Yeah, I do. I think that, well, first of all, the conflicts are artificial.
Yes.
I mean, they aren't natural. There's no reason for their existence. They're just done for depopulation. I mean, look at the Ukraine. I mean, this is just a theatrical, the pretense is theatrical. Obviously NATO is using Ukraine they're using the word to depopulate. Okay, what will deter the final, solution for I hate to use the expression, for, like the non-oligarch class, what will deter it is the acquisition of political power, right? That's what we have to do. The federal level is just too polluted to do anything about. It's just a complete Judeo-Masonic, structure. But at the local level, you can, get every single scrap of political power that you can possibly get. Dog catcher, school board, sheriff is very important, in the United States, mayor, councilman. We should all be recognizing that the political power is the key here, is that's what they attacked, that's what they got control of and then used against us. So we have to bubble up with our numbers in the areas that we can actually have real elections. I mean, we can't, like whether or not it's Trump versus Biden again is irrelevant to the project against us. Both of them are involved with it. But at the level of sheriff, which is an office that here in California, we had a situation where we had a near civil rebellion in that righteous sheriffs were refusing to follow Newsom's mandates concerning like the lockdowns. They just said, no, we're not going to do it. Now, this, I think, put a restriction on what Newsom could do in terms of like the power of the mandate, because the sheriffs wouldn't enforce it, not everywhere, but in 4 or 5 large counties, the sheriffs were righteous and they said, forget this. Well, okay, there is our, path. There it is. Get the sheriffs to be righteous, promote them, get city councilmen, supervisors, get the lower tier of political power, get that under control. And now you can resist when the top-down oligarchic instructions to genocide occur.
Yeah. Joe, this was fantastic. This is such important information. Before we go, remind the audience where they can find all your work.
Just go to CaesarsMessiah.com if you want to buy the books. If you want to talk to me, just joeatwill@gmail.com. I get a lot of emails, so I can't get back too quickly to everyone, but I do try to answer every single one. So just if you have questions or criticism, please send them there. Support Chris. That would be way to support me.
Thank you so much. This was great. I'd love to do this again in the future. We barely scratched the surface. There's much more we can do.
There's 100 hours of stuff we can go over. I don't want to, but I'd be boring your audience. But listen, thank you so much for the opportunity, Chris, and I hope we can talk again, okay?
Yes, we definitely will. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.